Hey everyone, welcome back for another Reddit story. Today we have an entitled parent story for you to enjoy, so sit back, relax, and let's go. Entitled mom freaks out because her kid can't pet my dog. This happened several years ago and to date is the most abrasive interaction I've had with other folks in public regarding my service dog, who is now retired. I was maybe about 21 at the time and was in the beginning stages of really learning to be an adult on my own at the time. I had just moved out of my parents' house to an apartment with a friend. Before this, I still lived at home with my parents and usually just went to school, work, and didn't often go places alone because I'm kind of a homebody. So between school, work, and the odd outing with my parents or friends, everyone usually around me was really respectful and familiar with my service dog and my general rules about her. I didn't have issues usually, and if I did, someone less anxious and more assertive was usually there to help me. This was no longer the case after I moved out. I was out and about running some errands on my own, which I was beginning to enjoy doing with my service dog at my side. Along the way, I realized I hadn't eaten in a while and decided to stop at the food court of the mall I was in right then for something quick and tasty. I got my food, found a seat, and began to get my service dog focused and prepared to go through our usual process so I could get started on my meal. I'm not secretive or anything personally, and usually I'm down to discuss my dog and educate if I have the time or energy with someone who is polite and well-meaning. I have a really intense food allergy, so that's what she is for. She also knows how to bring me a handful of objects on command, like an EpiPen, inhaler, or just lay down next to me to give me access to meds carried on her harness. It's really important that she's not to be disturbed while I have her check things, because a missed alert can be life or death for me. Not to be dramatic or anything, breathing tends to be important. So I'm about to go through the process of having my dog do a check for me when I see a child making a beeline for my service dog. She is harnessed, clearly and boldly marked, and not facing this little girl. That doesn't matter though, because the child is clearly too young or excited to read. Entitled kid, puppy! I placed a hand out instinctively just in time to keep her from touching my dog, who is still set to do her check thankfully. I try to be understanding with kids, but I have a few hard and fast rules. I never reward attempts to touch without asking. I will stop and thank polite children though. Each situation usually gets a conversation from me about how important working dogs are. However, even with polite children, I do not stop my dog mid-task for my own safety. Me, oh no, honey, please don't touch the puppy. She has a really important job and is working right now. This is usually a good enough explanation for most children about 2 and up. Not this one though, because she immediately starts crying. I'm talking full on pouring tears and a red face as she screamed loudly in the busy food court. I looked around for a parent and locked eyes with a round blonde woman who was apparently staring icy daggers at me. Entitled mom, why are you touching my child? Entitled kid, puppy, I want the puppy. Entitled mom marches over to me from a table and demands that I just let her child pet my dog. I could feel the heat on my neck. I was so embarrassed at all the staring faces. Me, I'm sorry, I really can't do that. This is my service dog and she's working right now. If I let her get distracted during her task, I can get really sick or even worse. Entitled mom, service dogs are for disabled people. You obviously aren't blind and you don't look sick. Me, thanks, that means she's doing a good job. EM, what's wrong with you then? Just let her pet the dog. The child is carrying on incoherently during this exchange and has now thrown herself on the floor. My service dog is not engaging her but is fond of children, so she's looking at her with concern. I get more irritated because I will have to wait longer to eat now. Me, well, that's none of your business. Nobody's petting the dog. Can you please leave me alone? Your kid shouldn't be running at large dogs she doesn't know anyway. EM, I bet you're just faking it. I don't think pit bulls can even be service dogs. Me, well, any breed can be a service dog, lady. Please go away and take your daughter with you. EM looks like I just slapped her in the face. She could tell I wasn't going to budge. She picked up the small screaming child, walked back to her table, and put her in a stroller. She gathered her stuff and left. I breathed a sigh of relief and decided to check my phone for a minute so my service dog could forget the ordeal and reset. I figured it was behind me and I could go back to what I was doing. Oh, how wrong I was. Just a few minutes later, I could hear the screech of an EM heading back into battle. The child was still crying, and this time she was accompanied by a security officer. EM, there, that animal bit my baby. My eyes probably looked like they were going to fall out of my head. I knew people had weird hang-ups about breeds, but this lady had just been demanding her kid be allowed to pet my dog. I couldn't believe it. This particular security guard looked like he didn't want to be mediating between adults at all. He asked me if it was true, and I of course said it wasn't. I told him that the child had run up to my dog, and the mother was mad I wouldn't let my dog be pet. He asked if she was the service dog. I confirmed she was. He asked if she was trained to do a task to mitigate a disability. I confirmed she was. EM, she is lying. That mud bit my daughter and made her cry. EK, puppy. The child is visibly reaching for her dog. The security guard is clearly having none of her crap at this point. My service dog is calmly sitting next to us during the whole ordeal, watching me. She doesn't exactly look vicious and is actually quite a sissy. At this point, a girl around my age chimes in. Girl, this lady and her kid were bothering OP. That child was never bitten. You have cameras, right? The security guard confirms there are indeed cameras and says we will all need to follow him so we can check the footage due to the severity of the accusation. Security guard, either I have to call animal control or the police. Harassing a service dog is a felony and a dog biting a child is a pretty big deal. Either way, someone is in trouble. EM looks panicked and starts to backpedal and says she is willing to drop it and everyone can go their own way. Her precious baby is fine after all. Me, well, I am not willing to drop it. You lied about me. Let's go. 3 more security guards showed up and we all get escorted to the security office. Sure enough, the footage shows that the kid never even got within arm's reach of my dog and EM was harassing us. They ask me if I want to press charges and I say I do. Police show up within a few minutes and I happen to know one of the officers because he's my ex-boyfriend's dad. We split amicably before we graduated high school. He knows me, he knows my dog, he loves my dog, and said she's one of the best trained doggies I ever met. I usually wouldn't be petty, but I excitedly greet him. He smiles and asks if it's okay to pet service dog at the moment. I thank him for asking permission and say, of course. EM looked like she could just throw something. The other officers take my statement. In the end, the officer sees the footage. EM gets arrested and extra charges thrown on for resisting arrest and assaulting an officer. It was pretty wild. And my first real experience with entitled people on my own. The charge for harassing my service dog ended up getting dropped, but the other 2 charges stuck. I didn't care too much about that, but hopefully she learned a lesson. I also did eventually get to eat. So that's the story for today's video. If you enjoyed this, give me a like to support the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.